right, I'm Jay. I'm back again for another one, and today I have with me.
Joselito.
What's good, Joselito?
Good, good. Thanks for inviting me for this review.
I'm very curious of your thoughts and feelings about this new movie by Jordan Peele called Nope. Jordan Peele. I think it's very interesting how bold he's trying to be with his movies and his concepts and things. I think the first movie that he did, Get Out, was probably one of his more easier films to process as far as like what he's trying to say with them and connecting to people just, right off the back. It wasn't like a whole bunch of what did he mean by that or mean by this. It was pretty kind of straightforward in a trippy kind of way. And so everything he's been doing since then, like with Us and then with Nope, is seeming like people are having different and mixed feelings and responses to his films. Because even myself, I had mixed feelings about his movie Us. Like I enjoyed it and everything, but it wasn't necessarily my favorite. And I think part of my feelings about that movie was the fact that was my expectation of what I thought was going to be. I don't know if I fairly judged it, but it doesn't help you feeling a certain kind of way, wanting a certain kind of thing, expecting a certain kind of thing, and then getting something, and then just trying to figure out how do I really feel about it. And so sometimes when it be movies like that, I have to see them more than once to try to work out my feelings about them. Now, if I just don't like something, I don't even fool with it again. But if it's like, you know what, is there something there? Then sometimes I'll be like, let me take another look or listen to see if it's something that I feel differently about it after another viewing or a discussion. And with you being like a writer, like I said, I was very curious to see what your thoughts would be on this film and your take on it. So let's start off with, so what is your overall feelings about the film?
I'm going to preface this by saying that I don't dislike the film. If I were to put it kind of like on a meter between 1 to 100, meaning below 50 would be dislike, I probably would rate this movie, I'd say at about like in the 70s. I don't dislike the movie, but I'm disappointed where the movie went. And when I say disappointed, in my view, I thought this movie had a lot of potential to be like the movie that would top Get Out in terms of just the concept and the execution of the premise of the story. That being said, like as I said, there's a lot of things in this movie that I wish were done differently, but they weren't. So I'll say that it's an enjoyable movie, but it left me wanting more.
Okay. I enjoyed the movie. I ended up seeing it twice. Even though I enjoyed the movie, I'll be lying if I said that I understood the whole thing the first time. But I did end up liking it more than not liking it. I felt it was like a lot in there, and it's kind of hard to unpack. And I think I was constantly fighting against what I thought it was going to be versus what I was seeing. And I think it didn't help how the trailer was very misleading, even though it was on point, but it was very misleading as well.
Yes. Yes.
It was one of those few times where everything that was in the trailer was pretty much in the movie, but it just wasn't in the place that I thought it was going to be. And so
different context.
Right. So it was very truthful, but very misleading at the same time. And I think it just took me a long time, majority of the movie, to unpack as I was watching. And I think it just made it more work for me because of that. So I understood why the presentation was a certain way to get people in there. But then when you, like I said, depending on how you think and how your mind works, I was constantly trying to unravel what I saw and expected versus what I was getting. Instead of just sitting there watching it, I was like, well, how does that fit? So it was kind of work for me in a way, unexpectedly, but I did like it. And when I saw it a second time, when I kind of knew what I was getting into, it definitely made it a much easier, and I got more out of it viewing it after kind of putting my guards down, and my expectations wasn't as conflicted, for lack of a better word, but I did enjoy it. And so with that being said, let's get into a deeper discussion as far as like, so what were some of the things that you were kind of expecting, or what kind of just didn't click for you as far as like the story or whatnot?
Okay, can we say spoilers?
Yes, we can. So this is our spoiler section of the conversation.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so the way that the trailer set it up, or my expectations from seeing the trailer, I wasn't expecting it to be a horror like a pure horror movie, but similar to um, M. Night Shyamalan's movie The Village,
Yeah.
where there's some you're placed in this world where there's this mysterious outside threat, and that's what I thought when I saw the trailer, and pretty much the movie was that, but I just thought that the execution could have been a lot better in terms of the creature in the movie. Wasn't started off as a kind of a menacing creature, but it kind of became just at the end of it, near the end, it just became kind of a hokey thing where they're trying to fool the creature, and the things that they do, the things with the balloon man. Is that what balloon man? The one that gives the warning,
Like
so
the sky dancer things that
yeah,
they
the
use for,
sky
like,
because for like
yeah,
the used car lot.
cars, exactly.
I understand, obviously we all know why they were doing that and what purpose they serve, but I just felt that it was kind of like I was hoping that as I watched the movie that they would talk, because they had set up the precedent prior to that creature with the whole backstory of the what's his name, I don't think he has a name, Steven Yeun's character.
Yeah,
he has a real name in that.
Yeah, his name was Ricky Park, but his nickname from the show was Jupe, short for Jupiter.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. But how the flashback of when he was a child star in that famous TV show and the incident with the chimp, I thought that would kind of serve as like a kind of a warning of what would come, a parallel to what may happen with the new danger, the creature in the sky. And I thought that with his experience and how he was able to survive, and watching it, it was one of the most tense things, and I thought that one of the great things about that movie was the whole thing with the chimp. You could have actually just you could have just done a movie just about leading up to the thing with the chimp, and then and from what I've read about chimps, I'm surprised he wasn't killed too, because from my understanding, if you stare at a chimpanzee, they're gonna take that as a threat. So I was surprised that it was very, very, that's probably one of the most tense scenes in the movies. Like, it was really well done, where it felt like the studio where it shows that all the, it's a dead body, and it looks like it's all abandoned. It was very almost like a zombie movie. It was very, very well done. And then it changes to this new threat, but then the new threat didn't seem as much of a threat as the actual flashback to the chimpanzee. So I mean, that's one aspect that I just wish that they did more with that, because I thought that was really, really a good setup. But I thought that it didn't really do enough, and it feels like that this Jupe didn't learn from that experience, because he was still gonna exploit the creature, or he didn't know it was a creature, but he was gonna try to capitalize on it.
Right.
Considering what he went through I would have thought he would have learned from that, but he didn't. So.
And that's funny that you said that, and it's funny. Just from our conversations, I think a lot of times, we think a lot alike about certain kind of things, or at least not exactly the same, but the line of thinking and the way we catch certain kind of things. Because I felt the same way when I saw. First of all, I wasn't expecting for the movie to start with a monkey attack. I had no idea. At first, it's almost like, am I watching the right movie? Because I wasn't expecting for that to have anything to do with the movie at all. But that explained where that scary fist bump was coming from, because I thought it was like an alien fist bumping a kid or something, but you find out it's a bloody monkey about to fist bump a kid. So I was like, oh, that's that scene. And it's just like, I didn't know it was gonna be connected to this situation. And so, like you, I noticed that, the monkey was tearing everybody up, and I was like, thought it was like the character Jupe was lucky that he didn't get, destroyed as well. Because just like when the dad character came downstairs, and he tried to chastise that monkey, the monkey was chasing him down and ended up killing him too, or mauling him as well. And so, but I did notice when they showed the perspective of Jupe under the table, he had like this yellow, like table cover that was slightly low on in front of his face, and so his eye level was being blocked by that. That's, you could see through it. It's kind of mesh and it was yellow, and so you saw that his eye line was covered by that, because when the monkey walked up to the table, under the thing he was underneath, you could see the monkey's eye line was covered by through that mesh. So you could see that the monkey couldn't see his eyes, and the kid could see the monkey, but it was kind of like blocked.
Okay.
Because even on the screen where they kind of show our perspective, even part of the screen was like a quarter down, that was covered by that tablecloth. And I was thinking, like, that's kind of weird for him to shoot it like that, because usually it's a clean shot. You don't block that stuff with that monkey walking towards you.
Okay,
but it was kind of low and blocked his eye line.
Okay, so I missed that. So now that you say that, and you bring it up, so then he couldn't have learned, because he wouldn't have known as a kid. He would have just thought, okay, just staring at him, nothing happened to him. Okay, so then that's the reason. That weird, like, just the weird randomness of the tablecloth partially blocking actually saved him then, and he actually didn't learn. That's why he didn't learn then. Because he thought that staring didn't do anything. So in the future time with the new creature, nothing's gonna happen to me,
because he even mentioned that incident, how he had almost like he had power over over the beast kind of thing, and so he got this connection with this thing as well, because that's why he kind of said it as if
that's actually a good point that you bring up, because now when I think about that, maybe he thought that surviving that incident gave him some kind of a special, not power, but maybe it was like something that in his mind, because he survived that there was something blessed about his life that would allow him to be able to do this with the new creature and not worry about his own safety.
Yeah, because he might think he has favor over all creatures and stuff. You never know. It's funny how people be in life and death situations. I think sometimes people go through stuff, it scares them into having like a certain respect for things, right? And they'd be like, okay, I'm never going to mess with that again. And then somebody else will go through the same thing and survive it, and they think like, I'm invincible. They didn't learn the lesson. They like, oh, well, that just means it ain't my time to die, so let me try some more stuff. No, that means you got away with it. Sit down, leave it alone. Don't keep poking the bear. Consider yourself lucky. But that just kind of goes to people's ego and stuff sometimes, and how we think we're running stuff and we're gonna do it our way, and it doesn't always work out that way. Like we mistake grace for power.
Yes.
And it can be deadly if you got it wrong. So speaking to that scene, what did you think of that shoe that was just kind of sitting up there like that without falling over? One of the women that got mauled, and she was laying there, and the monkey was kind of beaten while she was on the ground.
Yes.
One of her shoes was standing straight up on end.
Yeah, I remember that. I don't know if that was meant to be anything other than just like something so horrific that there could just be a random thing within the horrific event that maybe, I don't know, that you can actually laugh at that, like in the midst of the horror. There's just, why is this shoe just standing like that? Or just I don't know if there's any meaning other than just the randomness of where something horrific is happening. You'll notice something that just doesn't make sense. Why is this?
Because I thought I was seeing things before, right? And I was like, well, that couldn't have been right. Or maybe I didn't see it right. But later on, when they showed Jupe at his ranch, and then he shows the folks like the back room with the stuff from the set of the show, he has that same shoe in a glass box, standing up the same way it was when he saw it that day on the ground. And
Okay, so
so I'm like, okay, so that really was a thing. So that shoe was, cause it was
okay,
standing up the same way. And I'm like, that's interesting. And he
that could
didn't
also,
mention it and say anything about
yeah,
it, but I thought it was weird that when they showed it, I was like, the shoe's still sitting up.
maybe that's also part of what I was saying earlier, or when you had mentioned that the shoe standing up could have also been some to him like a signal of like some divine thing, that that's the reason why he was also protected, because this shoe is a marker. It shouldn't be doing this. So maybe that's also something, because he did keep it, as you said. It was in his museum, and he hadn't changed the position of the way the shoe was standing. So maybe to him, that was also a sign of him surviving the event, because some weird random divine thing as a shoe is a signal to him, like, I don't know, a message from God saying, hey, this is why you survived, and I chose you to survive, and this shoe standing oddly like this is one of my hidden signals to you. Maybe that, I don't know, it could have been that, because he did keep it, like you said, in his museum, so it must have meant something to him.
Yeah, and it probably also caught his eye line too, because he was looking in the direction of it. So he could have just been looking at it, and that kind of kept his eye line where it was, kind of like, am I seeing that right? You know, and all that stuff just kind of happening in a weird way that kind of saved him. And
again, and again, going back to what I was saying, that in the midst of like a horrific event, you're witnessing a horrific event where you might be killed yourself. But in the midst of that, you can get distracted by the most random thing that in the regular world of physics shouldn't be. The shoe shouldn't have been standing like that. It just, in any normal situation where if it was the monkey wasn't even the chimp wasn't even attacking him, it wouldn't do that. But where a monkey's actually attacking, somehow it's able to still stand up like that. You know. So yeah, that's a good thing you mentioned that. I totally forgot about that because I was so focused on just all this stuff. Like for me, like that shoe wouldn't have saved me. I would have been just like so focused on the chimp that I would have missed that shoe.
Yeah.
If I were in it.
Yeah, like I said, if it wasn't kind of like in the center of the screen like that, because like I said, it was just so much chaos, and how could you not look at the monkey and all the stuff he was doing? But that's the only constant that was going on, with that monkey walking back and forth and knocking the head off and hitting the woman's foot. But I agree with you when you say like that was just kind of showing that, you know, Jupe didn't learn from the lesson, or he got a different lesson from it other than the correct one, because when he tested it against the new situation, it didn't fare out so well.
It's a good thing you brought up the whole shoe thing. In the present, with the new sky creature, did you notice that there was anything like the shoe thing that happened in the present that didn't make sense? Because like I'm wondering if like you noticed it, I didn't really notice it, but I'm wondering if that would have had a significance in the future, or if it's was just isolated to just that past event.
To be honest, the closest thing I could say that I thought that was kind of like something that made me wonder, because that was an odd thing that happened with the shoe, and I thought another odd thing was like that praying mantis that kind of covered up the camera.
Yes, yeah.
Right at the right time. I thought that was very suspicious as well, and I'm thinking like, is it like working with nature to, you know, and I mentioned this before I was talking with the fellas about how, you know, Aquaman summons fishes to kind of protect and do all this other kind of stuff. I'm thinking like, is that thing summoning things to kind of help protect this, you know, its cover, you know what I mean, from like electronics, because he already has a thing where it kills all electronics and stuff. So would it be something that would always kind of, you know, in nature that's kind of does stuff that it wasn't normally do? Because even OJ mentioned, like, I haven't seen one of those in a long time. So for him to be outside with the horses and being a kind of outdoorsy kind of person, not to see one of those in a long time, and then the night that they trying to record that thing, it's being blocked by that thing, and as soon as that thing leaves, it flies away.
Yeah,
it's very suspect.
Yeah, it's also because I'm not too familiar with. I'm a little bit familiar with praying mantises, but I just thought it was kind of odd because where they were and like the environment, I just don't see where there would have been any mantises in
Right.
because they would be in a place where they would have like food to eat. That place doesn't look like it's like an ideal place. Again, but going back to what you're saying, maybe the creature somehow can manipulate or speak with nature and use the mantis to its advantage. Or I think possibly just like that tabletop where you talked about the randomness of how it's covering, maybe it's just a random micro event in the overall scheme of events where because that mantis randomly just was in the way,
Yeah.
it affected that an outcome happened because of the fact versus like if it hadn't been there, it would have been it could have been a totally different outcome, and it could just be random, just like with the table plot. The fact that the table plot randomly saved them from getting killed because of cover the eyes. Maybe the mantis was just a random thing that for some reason it was to the advantage of that sky creature in this instance.
Yeah, this movie definitely had me thinking about the things that we take for granted to be random. You know, like running like all green lights or hitting all red ones. It's like, is this something else to that, or is it really just timing? Or you know, or you go back to your house to, you know, because you think you left the garage door open, so you go back to check it. But then when you go back, it was just a car accident that was just right there, or something could have been in you know, you could have been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Like, truly, we could be minutes away from anything bad happening to us, and just because we decide to go left or right or go a different way home or got stuck somewhere a little longer than we need to be could have saved us from a situation. Because even I know for myself, there's been times where something weird will come up and I have to not go somewhere or miss something, and then I hear about something after the fact that's like, oh, I'm glad you didn't come, man. You would have to send you back home anyway because this wasn't going on or happening anyway. So it's funny how this movie kind of plays with that and makes you kind of second guess how quote unquote random stuff could be more something to it than just being a coincidence, because we just don't know.
Yeah, and if when you put it that way, that puts the movie in a more favorable light to me. It raises, you know, I was saying like, what is it, like in the 70 percentage of my approval. Now, when you mention that, when I think about, I like the idea that if Peele had intended to show randomness to just play into the story, that makes the movie, I think, better for me in the fact that it's not a typical story. Like, I love it when it's like the idea of like a randomness, and where in a typical movie when they're trying to fight against whatever they're trying to fight against, they have a plan, and then they don't even, most movies they don't even account for a randomness to happen that could affect the plan. So when you bring up the idea of that this movie might have presented randomness, that's even better, because that means that the outcome, you can't really plan for randomness, and I like that. If that's the case in this movie, that's a good thing to have in this movie, the randomness.
Yeah. To me, honestly, this movie had, to me, even when I first watched it the first time, it just seemed like it was just layered with so much stuff. And I really think, even though I feel in the way that Jupe's storyline was cut short, and I heard that there's like, you know, it was a lot more shot, but they, you know, had to edit and all that kind of stuff. But I think the main point of that was like what you said, as far as, you know, being presented a situation and not learning the correct lesson from it, and then thinking something or having the wrong interpretation, implementing that because of that interpretation, and that getting you in more trouble. And so, even though it was a lot more I would have liked to have known or seen about Jupe and his situation, I think that with that part that we saw, it gave a lot, considering how short it was, as an example of because I really kind of think, like I said, I think this movie's about a lot of things. One thing for sure, I think it's about boundaries and respect, I guess, you know, and oppression, you know, things like that. Things that you think you have control over and you really don't, and that line and that boundary being tested and pushed too far, and then the reaction of that thing because you just pushed it a little too far, and how everything is about balance, and not giving things the respect that they're requiring. I think a lot of people and a lot of things give respect based off of what they want to give versus what the thing you're dealing with is asking for, which could be two different things. You could be like, treat me right, and they might be like, well, I'm showing you respect by paying you money. It's like, well, if you go too far, I'm gonna say screw the money and knock you out, because I've told you what I needed from you for our boundaries to be okay, and you choosing to give me something other than what I'm asking for. And somebody thinking like, just because I have money and power and this right or that is good enough, and that animal, that person or whatever is feeling like, well, that's not what I'm requiring from you, and we're gonna have a problem.
Yeah yes.
So I thought that was definitely one of the tales in this layered in there. Also with today's world of spectacle, which came up a lot. Even within the movie, it came up a lot, and about how you'll sacrifice everything for this shot, or you'll be in a situation where you're in danger and life is in danger, or somebody might need you, but instead of calling for help, you're taking a video of a situation when that's the time you should be trying to help. So what did you feel like the movie was about? Like I said, I thought it was about things getting pushed too far, and it reacting, and oppression in a way, and respect and things like that. So what did you take from it, or what did you feel was one of the things, or you got
I
from
was I thought that the movie was trying to just show like a basic premise of how human beings can think that they're like the top of the food chain, and how just something as basic as some new type of hunter that comes into the scene and endangers the previous species or animal that was thought to be in that area to be the top of the chain, actually not anymore, becomes the prey. Similar to the idea of when you have, like when they say not to bring in foreign animals from other places to a new place, and how that foreign animal just runs roughshod over, because there's nothing to stop it from
no accountability.
Accountability, yes. I just thought that the movie was on just the basic premise of like biology, where humans may have finally met like something that they have no answer for, and can just hunt them down and kill them. And I wanted the movie to be about that, where the premise, everything was set correctly, where the setting was kind of in an isolated area. So, those are the best like scary movies, where it's an isolated area, so you're not going to get a lot of help.
Right.
And what I thought, and this is the question before I forget, I wanted to ask you, when his father got killed, was it because of the result of the creature? It was because of the creature, right?
Yes, the creature, as we saw, we didn't know what was going on before, but later on we start seeing, after other couple times it did it, where it excretes this, all the stuff it cannot process, it shoots it out at a fast speed.
Okay.
And so you saw like where the horse got pelted with a key in the back of the horse, and you see like, his father got shot through his eye socket when he's looking up. With a quarter or a nickel or something like that, but it pierced his eye, went into his brain and killed him, from the sheer force of the coins and stuff being shot out of the creature.
Did they indicate how long when that happened, like how much time had passed when the father had been killed to the present time?
I think it was kind of mentioned, it was somewhere around 6 months, I think.
Okay.
Because that's when it first showed up, and that's when you found out that Jupe was actually feeding that thing, and he was, pulling together his new show that he was going to present to the people.
Okay. So one of the things, and maybe the reason why, similar to, because one of the things that I wish this movie did was, because they kind of set it up with the whole chimpanzee. So the idea of like the wild chaos of a wild animal that humans are trying to trained to use this for spectacle. The parallel between the chimpanzee being in the show and in the present with Jupe and trying to make sky creature into like the chimpanzee where it would be a spectacle and he, capitalize on that monetarily. I was hoping that if his father had been killed and it was at least a minimum of 6 months, what I wish that the movie had done, and it didn't do it this way, was that if you want to establish a little bit of a tension and scariness to the idea of this creature, they could have shown like where there'd be flyers, random flyers, where this small town is like infamous for people just going suddenly missing. I mean, that could have been because it's one thing where you have to, if the creature hadn't been there, hadn't killed his father, meaning if the creature had just arrived, and the movie is about them dealing with the creature who had just arrived there to start, eating people. That's one thing. But because if there was like a time gap, then it would have been interesting if they could have established that something is going on in that place because some random people are like this. They could have done something where, a curfew is set where you shouldn't be out, and then that could have added to the tension. But they didn't really do that. So when I watched it, I was thinking, okay, so I'm assuming that the creature killed the father, and I thought it was like a year. So I misread that. But there was a sizable time gap either way. It was more than a month at least. Right.
Yeah. So we're okay. So I'm thinking when they decided to try to film it to catch it, I think that time with their dad passing and that situation when they were trying to catch it on film was close in time. But I'm saying I believe that creature was there for at least 6 months because that's how long Jupe was feeding it and trying to prepare his new show. That's where I got the 6 month time. But also, if you notice, they had a whole bunch of the news playing in the background, and they was mentioning people missing and random things falling out of a plane, and that's what they said killed his father. So the news is being used, talking in the background, kind of saying what was going on. Like they mentioned something like a flash flood and people missing and different things, or a storm, and they thought it was kind of weird. So it was almost kind of like the news, how they spin stuff in the back, where they might know something bigger happened, but they don't really say what it is. So they say, oh, it was just a tornado that came through or a sandstorm and all those people were just end up missing, or they evaporated, or just some kind of crazy answers to stuff. Just, it's so much crazy stuff that happens that we just brush off. Now I'm not talking about we as in we. I'm talking about we as in the media and the news. How they give a simple answer to something that's definitely more complex than you would think, and then they just give some kind of, one line answer to what it was, And so I even have a theory that, the government and the media and stuff, they knew about that thing. Because when the TMZ guy showed up and he was saying like he wanted to film, he wanted to see for himself because even on Google Maps, they blurred it out in that area. And so he had to come down there and see for himself. And I'm thinking like, why would the Google Maps blur out something that's not there? Why would they, you know what I mean? So it's just like the news is giving misleading information. You got the Google Maps blurring out the area where stuff is happening. And you think that if people are just missing and stuff like that, that it wouldn't be no big investigation and the government wouldn't be trying to figure out what was going on. It's almost kind of like how the missing children is almost nonchalant. And to the point where if it's not that big of a deal, why is it not a big deal? Because it is a big deal. And so if you don't see people running to fix it, do they want the problem to continue? You got to kind of question why things are broken and stay broken.
That's a good point. Now, if you put that idea, I would think that the government's not necessarily like involved where they somehow created the creature, but maybe they're allowing. If I think a bit of the government theory, maybe the government is allowing the creature to be able to eat. And eating at that town is better than like in a major metropolis area because nobody's gonna know about nothing town. So like let it do its thing there, because you notice that it doesn't go. Isn't there that nearby more populated area?
Yes.
There's that area that's more popular. But I was thinking, how come the creature doesn't just go there? There's like more people in that populated area.
And they're not too far from Hollywood. They're in near Southern California, so there's plenty of places that thing could go to. So, like I said, I just kind of think like some evils, I think society let it be. You know what I mean? I just truly think that, and in some kind of way, even though it's unfair, it's kind of like balanced in a way. You know what I mean? Like some stuff just got to be wrong to keep something else in service. And it's just depending on what side you're on it, you know, like we get our computers, but then some children are being, you know, slaved out to do that. It's like it's these costs that as long as you're not paying for them, they're okay. You feel bad about it because you know they're wrong, but we let evils happen for convenience and for, you know, I guess convenience.
Yeah, I like the idea though, if that you bring up about the government somehow knowing about it and maybe being complicit, because if that's the case, this movie even like gets better, even better for me, because not necessarily because the government is somehow involved or not involved, but the fact that it's a possibility, but they don't really bring it up. Because in a lot of movies, it's like the people that are trying to save the day, somehow they get all the answers. I always hate that. Like they're able to get all the answers and the government. But this is more realistic where like if you're really in this situation, all you're doing is trying to survive, right? And find the quickest way to either survive or like get rid of what you're trying to fight against. So you're not going to be able to dig deep enough to know, wait a minute, the government, you know, you're not. So all you're trying to do is set reservations. It's too convenient. It's like they'll figure these things out. But if that is the case where the government is somehow involved, but it's not really said, but it's kind of implied, that makes the movie even more interesting doing it that way.
Right, but how would it be any different than how, you know, the government treated UFOs and stuff? And they just did that footage stuff that they just, after all these years, they start showing, you know, some of that footage. And that's still not all of it, but you know how many years that they went saying that it didn't exist and it was, you know, in Area 51 and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that the government doesn't really say, and we don't know. But if they could be that tight-lipped about that kind of stuff, then how's that any different than how the movie would handle it?
Yeah. I just wish that this movie, like, because I was so intrigued by this creature, I just wish that there was more, like something where, not that, I wanted something where it was, because one of the parts that I liked about this movie, in terms of the creature, was when it sucked up those people, right? And so it shows like that weird tunnelish, that it almost looks like you're inside like I guess it's the gut, I don't know what it is, but it kept showing that when it was empty, that when the people were inside it, they're all screaming. I thought that was really effective, and that like really added to the horrific thing. But I wish that they did something else. I mean, maybe would have pushed it over the edge where the people are all screaming. All of a sudden, you kind of see them like there's some group that goes over them, and then they're just like screaming because they're being literally getting digested. That might have pushed it over the edge, but something where it just like shows the idea. It's almost like the idea where it's a giant bacteria, and like the horrificness of seeing something so foreign, like an animal in front of us. I
think in that situation, less was more, and that it would have turned into a whole different kind of movie if they would have kind of showed that. Because really, it was bad enough when we saw the blood rain and the pieces of bone and the keys and all the other kind of stuff. So that kind of shows you. And also how long it takes for it to digest, because you would hear in the sky, it's like a roller coaster, people just screaming and flies over your head and screaming, and just like, is that a roller coaster?
I mean, they already had like the chimp. I mean, that was pretty bad as it is.
But even with that, okay, so the people that got mauled and beat by the chimp, they was either behind a desk, they were behind a door, they were on the other side of the wall.
Implied violence.
Yes, so you never seen it. And to be honest, I don't think they could have showed anything that would have been worse than what I thought was happening, from it moving up into that thing, and you see like something that looked like something organic or bones and stuff like that thing is. So what did you think when you realized that that thing was not a ship and it was a thing? It was an actual creature. What did you think of that?
I like that idea. I really like that idea. But again, I just felt like the execution, like I wanted the execution to be more like this would have been hokey. But for example, like you have like somehow some one of the characters, you set up a precedent where one of the characters during the beginning of the movie and throughout the movie just happens to randomly know like about animals, certain animals, and just randomly says stuff about animals. And so, and then they could have a scene where they could talk about a certain, like say like a starfish, something. It won't be the same thing as the creature, but something that almost parallels like the behavior of the way this creature is, to show, to add to that tension of like this is something biologically different than what we're like again, the whole idea where I said that you're bringing something that shouldn't be brought, because once it's brought to a foreign place, it's gonna just, there's no opposition and it's just gonna take over and there's nothing gonna stop it. That's the same thing with this creature. It's like it's literally in a playground where nothing is gonna be able to stop it. It's just gonna be able to have its way and eat whenever and whatever it wants to eat. And I wish that I wish they did more in terms of the biology. I wish they did a little bit more. It doesn't have to go into detail, but once they established that it was a creature versus like a UFO with aliens inside it, I wish they dealt a little bit more with like something with the biology. They don't have to go into detail, but just something to infer, because they were kind of already doing that with the chimp. You're already kind of being put in this setup where humans are, you know, we're animals too, but we're like evolved to a point where we can separate ourselves from like the chimp, where the chimp will do, can't be tamed. That's the same parallel with this sky creature. It's literally a feral creature just coming to a place and eating, doing what it naturally wants to do and eat.
And also in the flashback, his father said that to OJ, saying like some creatures can't be tamed, they got to be broken, but they can't be tamed. So even that was said in the flashback. But what you're saying, like I said, I thought that was covered with the, you know, with the situation with the monkey, and then I also thought it was covered with OJ and him dealing with the horse. Because it was always about the eyes and not looking them in the eyes, and also the proper protocol with the treatment of animals. Because you heard like even in real life where the monkeys on sets wasn't treated right or engaged the wrong way, or even with horses, they're buck on you if you don't walk around them the right way, or if you don't. So it's almost like these rules are being laid out. Respect. Do not, because even you saw how the horses calm in the beginning of the movie when the horse is on set. And everybody didn't listen to everything that was being said. This is the protocol for dealing with a horse. Don't put it in front of his eyes. They put it in front of his eyes. Don't walk behind the horse like that. They walk behind the horse like that. Every time they didn't listen to the rules of that animal, something bad happened. Even when they were guided by somebody who understood and told them the rules. And nobody listens, and then they got what they got because of it. Yeah. And so if anybody, OJ was the person that was more into reading what was going on, because even at night they show him looking up at the sky. It's like trying to figure out how this thing is moving, what it might be, and how it might be, you know, all these kind of things. Because he even kind of did a correlation with the, you know, staring at it and that causing it to, you know, see him in an attack. That's why he knew about the shades and even how to use it against them. Like if you wanted to lure them in, we'll put these sky dancers with these eyes moving and stuff to kind of draw it out. So even he knew in nature, he figured out his nature enough to even use it against them, to try to draw him out to, you know, get a picture or get some footage of it. So if anybody was there that was kind of connected and kind of understood creatures and maybe what they would need or not need, it was OJ. And he used those things to kind of deal with it and to get from it what he needed from it. But it wasn't necessarily like Jupe, who was trying to, like I said, he didn't understand how the horses would deal with it. He didn't understand, you know, that it wasn't safe for everybody to be there. You know, he was more concerned about people not filming it So so he couldn't sell the show more so than not looking at it. Because really, he could have had who knows, little mirrors and say, hey, it's like looking into an eclipse. Use a special box where you don't look exactly at the sun and the moon because you mess up your eyes. You can look at it this way. He had he was just worried about the money part of it. Like, just don't take a money shot because I want people to come have this experience and see it for themselves. And that got everybody killed.
Yes.
Got everybody killed. Not understanding what was needed by the thing that it was dealing with. And so, like I said, I felt like OJ kind of covered that, and all that stuff with the eyes, looking into the eyes, and I don't know necessarily, maybe even submitting in a way, because it almost got to almost a pissing contest between OJ and that creature towards the end, to the point where it started even puffing up when OJ wouldn't back off, and they kept messing with him. They put the plastic horse up there. He can't digest the horse, and it's messing with it. It's just like, to the point where that thing was trying to flex on it and show that it was bigger and tougher, more so than just saying, screw it, I'm not waiting for him to look at me, I'm going to just get him. But yes. It's almost like that creature was stuck to its nature. Like, I can't get you until you do this. Even though I'm mad, I need you to give me what I need so I can get you the way I want to get you. It wouldn't even go outside its nature. And they used it against it. So So
well, that's one of the things I do like about the movie is that in most movies, I don't like whenever the creature or the opposition in a movie will do something contrary up to the point of that where they're consistent in acting a certain way, and all of a sudden they'll do something that they didn't do before. I hate that. So I do like that this creature, although it was daunting for them to defeat it, it still had to abide by its own rules of how it behaves, meaning it didn't go away from that. I like that. It's a consistency thing that with stories, sometimes for the sake of to add to the horror or spectacle, they'll make something contrary to what it was doing before, which is just a cheat in my opinion. So I'm glad that they were consistent at least with that.
Yeah, and they acted like an animal, like a dog or a cat, especially a cat that's pissed off and you didn't change his litter box and it just crap all over the place. It crapped on the house. It was pissed, so you had to, dump all that stuff, and it dumped it over the house just to show its disdain, It's not like this, So it's interesting how it was kind of familiar in its mentality in a way, but it was just like, it was a sky shark basically. And,
manta, or like a manta or something like that, manta or something.
But I thought it was brilliant how he gave us a UFO movie without a UFO in it. I thought, and instead of the tractor beam, it did the swirly thing that sucked up stuff. So it wasn't a tractor beam, but it was really a whirlwind that the thing made organically and sucked people up. So it gave you everything you would think would be an alien ship, but it wasn't an alien ship. And I thought, after all these years of all these movies and UFO movies, I have never saw that before. And people disappearing, and they're not disappearing because they, got put into a ship and the aliens took them to their planet. They don't come back because they got digested.
Yes.
So you got all the trappings of a UFO situation, but it's not. For all we know, that thing has just always been here. It's equivalent to a well, as far as we know. Because just because, if you're not there to tell the story, it wasn't there. And I think that thing probably stays around until it clears house, or, because if it ever sees any evidence of anything seeing it, then it would, take you out. So I think that, was it Dead Man Tells No Tales? So it probably could survive a long time if there's no witnesses.
Yeah.
Hey, we're going to stop this conversation here, but we're going to hit you back with another one soon. Hey, it's Jay. If you enjoyed my conversation with Joselito, check out our conversations where we talked about the movie The Norseman, Everything Everywhere All at Once, as well as the latest Dune movie. Thanks for listening. Until next time, peace. Thanks for listening, and please like and subscribe. Be sure to check out past and future episodes of this show, along with my other shows entitled The Movie Bench Quarterbacking Podcast and The J and Podcast, available now on all streaming platforms. Until next time, peace.